5. Go. All right, I'm calling a meeting of the Audit and Internal Controls Committee of the Nassau County Interim Finance Authority to order. It is May 23rd. It is 6:45, and 6:40, and all of the members of the committee are present, as well as other board members who have the right to ask questions during the course of the committee meeting, which may, when we move this to the full committee, to the full board, result in them not having questions in that venue. So I would encourage everybody to, will be the committee of the whole in that regard for the course of the meeting. The first item on the agenda is to approve the minutes of our last meeting, which was in December. Would a member please?
So moved.
Second.
Made and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
I vote aye as well. The minutes are approved. We will now consider, and Carl Dreyer, our treasurer, will come up and walk us through some of the materials, but ultimately what we're dealing with is approving the audited financials and then giving the board the authority and management the authority to submit those financials to the various regulatory authorities.
Yes, thank you and good evening. Are the people from RSM online? Okay. All right, I prepared the financial statements for the year ended December 31st, 2023, with the assistance of PKF O'Connor Davies, our outside accountants. I'll let RSM's representatives, who are presenting to us this evening via Zoom, take you through our financial statements in greater detail if you wish, but I'll summarize our results. Our net position improved by $80,425,000 while paying $67,914,000 in debt with sales tax receipts. The outstanding amount of NYPA's bonds payable at December 31st, 2023 is $1,079,820,000 and will continue to decrease in upcoming years as we're scheduled to pay $57,850,000 in outstanding debt in 2024, for example. I'm happy to answer any questions before we're asking that the representatives from RSM to join the presentation.
And I should point out that the members of the committee, Mr. Kessel, Mr. Meiji, Mr. Petraka, and I have all, as well as Dr. Zazzo, have all had access to the materials in advance and ample opportunity to ask questions. So if we don't have any now, it may be because we've asked them or read the materials and don't have any.
Right, okay.
So I don't have any. Does any other
No,
member have
I'm
any?
good.
I do not.
Okay. And feel free to turn it over to RSM.
Okay, if Jen and Kristen would join in.
Yep. Thank you, Carl, and good evening, everyone. This is Jen Katz speaking first. Just wanted to let you know we are substantially complete with the audit. We're going to go through our required communications so that you, as those charged with governance, can fulfill your responsibilities in that role. I was joined by Kristen Hughes this year in carrying out the audit in terms of oversight from our firm. So I'm going to turn it over to Kristen, who will walk you through those required communications.
Thank you. As I believe was noted, I think a lot of you have had an opportunity to go through these. So I am going to go through those required communications topics. I won't necessarily touch upon in detail every single item there, but I will certainly hit on each of the key topics that are intended to be communicated by the auditor to those charged with governance. As Jen mentioned, we're substantially through our audit work. I think consistent with prior years, our intent, assuming nothing comes up in this meeting, is to issue the final audit opinion in the morning, along with the final version of these auditor communications. So starting through the topics, as far as the financial statements that Carl referenced, we do expect to issue an unmodified opinion on the financial statements. As a reminder, that's the AICPA terminology for what's also referred to as a clean opinion on the financial statements. If you recall, Jen and I met with you all in December and went through the planned audit approach, including any significant risks identified. At this meeting, we would just note that there were no significant changes to the planned audit strategy or communications that we went through with you at that time. There was a material weakness that is being reported, and just to emphasize, this is the same matter that was reported in last year's audit, so I will touch upon that again just briefly at the end on a recap of the content of that, and it's also disclosed in the financial statements. Accounting policies and practices, we would communicate to you if there were any significant changes in accounting policies or practices this year that had a significant impact on the financial statements compared to what you may have seen in the prior year, and there were none. Also, if there was any significant or unusual transactions, those would be summarized, and there were none. You'll see a reference to significant accounting estimates. So as part of the audit, we do take into consideration any areas in the financial statements that are based on management's judgment. And so as part of the audit process, we do take a look at making sure really the judgments and estimates used by management are supported and appear reasonable based on the procedures we performed. So two that were noted as applicable to the financial statements. One is the fair value of investments. That is an estimate that is done. Management utilizes the custodial statements at the end of the year, and then as part of our audit work, just so you know, we do test the fair value of those with an independent service that just verifies those appear reasonable, and we concluded they were. Second item is the other post-employment benefit liability. Management utilizes an actuary for that estimate. We also utilize our own internal actuarial specialist as part of the audit. Very similar process, making sure the assumptions there were supported, and we also concluded that one was reasonable as well.
And I think we've been out of the derivatives, we got out of the swaps in 2021 long enough that with 2 years of financials, that's no longer a disclosure. It lived a little while longer while it was still the old year, but that's off the table now.
That's completely off the table.
Another reporting item, if there were any audit adjustments or uncorrected misstatements that came up during the course of our procedures, those would be summarized in the communications, and there were none. So what that means is the original trial balance we were presented with to begin our audit is consistent with the final audited financial statements that you've had a chance to review. Observations about the audit process. So just to make sure you're aware, I'll emphasize these were not applicable, but just to emphasize, if there are instances of disagreements with management, difficulties in obtaining information during the audit, any difficult or contentious matters that require communications, the standards do require that we communicate those to you. There were no such matters, so no concerns as far as getting information and performing the audit. Or dialogues that we went through as far as the audit process itself. You'll see references to independence, certainly a critical part of our profession and the steps that we take to ensure we are independent in performing our audit, but also the responsibilities that management and those charged with governance have as well, and just making sure they're notifying the auditors of any potential changes in the structure of the organization that could require us to reevaluate those independence conclusions each year. So as far as I alluded to, as part of the audit, there are additional deliverables we issue. One is we are required to issue a report on internal controls in accordance with government auditing standards. In general, the auditor is always required to communicate in writing if any items were identified as a material weakness or significant deficiency. As I mentioned, you'll see reference to one material weakness. Again, this is I'll just say a repeat of the item discussed last year. Specifically, the reason for that is the investment non-compliance that it related to was resolved in May of 2023. So by the fact that that was a fact pattern still in existence for roughly 5 months of the year, that is why specifically that is considered just to be repeated again in the 2023 financials.
But for those of us who practice in other venues where it's material weaknesses are measured at a point in time at the end of the year, if this was a public company, that would not be required to be reported or reported.
But it is reported because
it was during the year.
It was during the year, right?
Right.
I get it.
Exactly. You're right. Our audit covers the period, the December 31st and the year under cover, which is, as I noted, the first 5 months that was in existence. So you will see in the write-ups that there were updates made that, honestly, I think most of these facts were known at the time the audit was issued, but hopefully as we worked through drafts, it clearly articulates that one, the investments matured in May, there was no loss incurred to the authority, modifications were made to the investment policy. So hopefully all the facts are clearly laid out in the description of that write-up as far as the condition that existed, but also management's opportunity to respond to the actions taken. So as I noted, you'll see that noted as a material weakness, material non-compliance, and management has clearly described that in the financial footnotes as well. You'll also see, just as a reminder, the audit, we do not, in the course of performing an audit, we do not give an opinion on internal controls. So the content of that letter just clearly states that that is not how the audit is not designed to approach it with an opinion. However, again, if matters come up, those are reported to you, but there is the potential that other deficiencies could exist that were not identified in the audit just based on not being, not being the basis for which procedures are designed. And lastly, you'll receive a written copy, as I mentioned, these communications in writing, but also the last step in the audit process is the management representation letter, which is signed. And in summary, really two main themes there: that the financials are complete and accurate to the best of management's knowledge, as well as the information that was provided to the auditors in performing their testing. Before I pause for any questions, as I mentioned, this is the last expected few steps in the audit process. So I will also ask you, before anything is finalized, if there are any additional subsequent events that you may be aware of. So hopefully you saw in the draft the debt refunding that occurred subsequent to year end has been disclosed in the financials. Did want to inquire and make sure there's no other matters you're aware of that should be disclosed before that's finalized.
I'll pause and look around the room and let anybody from management who would have that information. I see nobody raising their hand or looking for attention on that matter. Also, I think the Tier 6, the state budget changed the Tier 6 retirement program, and we have reference to Tier 6 in our footnotes, so we'll probably update that to the extent that's material.
We have,
Or have.
there is the change to Tier 6, however, we have no Tier 6
Exactly.
employees.
So
Yeah.
we describe it as a possibility, but since it doesn't apply, we'll
It
leave
does,
that
yeah.
till next time.
There's no effect.
Okay. Happy to answer any questions. I think I've touched upon the required topics, and but happy to go through any questions on anything I went through.
Just a first question, and when we met in December and whenever we meet, the audit committee and the board let you know that should there come a time when you aren't receiving full or complete answers or documentation in response to any questions you may have, that you're welcome to contact any member of the board or the audit committee. I can confirm that no contact was required or made. I think you could say the same, and I would just ask the auditors to let us know whether or not management was fully cooperative and in full disclosure with any questions or documentation requests during the audit.
Yes, sorry, just to repeat, I think I touched upon that, but just to emphasize, no difficulties in obtaining information.
Great. I have no other questions. Any of the four members of the committee or Dr. Zazo, any questions for the auditors on the financials?
Yeah, I just have a question about the audit itself. How do you distinguish between the county and NIFA? In terms of NIFA is a separate entity from the county, but we do obviously interlock with the county on financings. When you're doing your audit, how do you separate the two? Because you're not auditing the county,
That's correct.
but you are auditing funds that we raise for the county. So how do you distinguish that?
Right, what we do is
Yeah.
we confirm amounts that we receive from New York State, and we also agree with the county's accounting department the amount of money that's transferred over. That's all, we verify both ends of the cash flowing through.
So
And presumably the auditors design procedures to audit what management has documented.
so you guys
I'm
document.
sorry, perhaps I could maybe clarify.
Yeah.
Our audit is a standalone review of our NIFA's financial
Right.
statements.
We're a component unit of the county.
When the county has its financial statements audited, we are a component that's included. NIFA's are a component of the county's financial,
Right, not the other way around.
audited financial statements.
So what
This is a
should happen-
standalone audit.
Right.
So what should happen is, in combination, the transfers, the interfund transfers cancel each other out. So that's the
But
way you know
that's
you're
cited though in the audit though, isn't it?
The county audit.
In the
Yeah.
county audit.
In the county,
The
right?
county has
Yeah.
multiple auditors and has to get
We're really a
through-
conduit.
And also who's the principal auditor, and probably referencing a number of opinions we need to.
Right, well, we're, as Lester said, we're a conduit,
We're
right?
conduit, yes.
But
We are a
is
conduit.
that reflected,
Absolutely.
It is.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
and the numbers are verified?
I'm in touch with the comptroller's office, and we basically maintain the same schedule.
Okay.
And then what we do is we agree those schedules at year end. so make sure that we're in sync. And as I mentioned, we also confirmed with New York State the amount of sales tax revenue that comes to NIFA.
Okay.
Thank you.
We've received RSM's report. We've had an opportunity for question and answer.
I'll
Any board?
move to approve.
Well, I just want to, we just have to ask if it's possible that any board member or RSM would want to have an executive session.
I'm good. I
good.
don't.
Okay. And in that case, a motion to approve the resolution at
move.
2F is made.
Second.
It's made and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
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 I vote aye. The committee votes in favor, and we will move that to the full board. We have a number of other items. Evan will go through our statutory reports, which include the financials, but include other information, our investment guidelines, and some of our amended procurement contract guidelines.
Yes, thank you, Chairman Wright. So, action item 3, behind tab 3, NIFA is required to annually issue numerous reports pursuant to the NIFA Act, the Public Authorities Accountability Act of 2005, and the Public Authorities Reform Act of 2009. The 2023 annual report of the authority is one such report and was provided to each of the directors in advance of the meeting as a standalone document. It was both emailed to you and you have hard copies, I believe, in front of you this evening.
The thicker of the documents.
Yeah, and that was sent separately because it will also be considered by the board later this evening after this committee takes action. The report briefly discusses the structure, mission, and accomplishments of the authority through December 31st of 2023. There are also a number of attachments to the annual report, which are included in tabs 1 through 11 of the report, not of your board materials, but of the actual standalone report. There are tabs. And those separate attachments include the authority's report on debt issuance, our audited financial statements, which you just reviewed, and a report on internal controls, a report on investments, our prompt payment report, our procurement contracts guidelines report, property disposition report, our mission statement and measurement report, and our code of ethics. These are all, in the annual report, are the documents that were actually approved last year this time. So it's, and then for completeness, we also attach into the annual report the NIFA's Act and bylaws. The report and attachments are submitted for your review and recommendation that they be approved by the board at its next scheduled meeting later this evening.
Any questions for Evan?
No.
Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the resolution behind
I'll
tab
move.
3? It's been made.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I vote aye as well. That resolution is approved and moved to the full board. We'll now consider item 4, which is the investment guidelines. And Evan, you'll continue with that discussion.
Yes, thank you. Tab 4 of the committee materials contains the authority's investment guidelines. The guidelines govern NIFA's investments, including the sales, monitoring, accounting, reporting, and internal controls by and of the authority. No changes are recommended at this time. However, they must be submitted to and approved by the board annually. So consequently, we are recommending that the investment guidelines be accepted by this committee today and forwarded to the board for approval at its next meeting later this evening.
Any questions on the investment guidelines?
No changes?
No changes from last year.
I'll move to approve.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, no. I vote aye. The resolution is approved.
Action item 5, tab 5, contains the authority's procurement contracts guidelines. These guidelines govern NIFA's procurement contracts, which are agreements for the acquisition of goods and services of any kind. The only changes being recommended at this time vis-a-vis last year's guidelines are to Schedule A, which is a standard set of requirements that NIFA attaches to its professional services contracts. The changes are primarily updates to conform Schedule A to certain new state contract requirements that were effectuated subsequent to NIFA's readoption of the guidelines last year. The changes were made by the state in June. We had our meeting in May.
And we haven't added anything of our own volition that is in addition to what the state required?
No.
We're at this point conforming to the state guidelines?
It's bringing it, kind of a house cleaning to bring it in conformance.
Yeah.
There's some just general updates included.
Sure. But nothing peculiar to NIFA that we've chosen to take a position on that stands apart. Okay. Got it. Any other questions for Evan on that?
No.
Just a quick a question. I think I know the answer, but just to be sure. We are subject, I assume, to the authority's budget office?
Yes.
And are we required, I know when I was at the IDA, we're required to file an annual report,
Yes.
which we do?
Yes.
And that includes a lot of the information that we're passing?
Correct. A lot of this information we have to upload into the Paris
Right, the
system.
Paris
It's
system.
an acronym
And
for
and
public
do
authorities.
do they perform an audit of the of NIFA? Sorry. I was gonna
Not
say
that, not
IDA.
that I'm aware of. I mean, we're subject to, if we don't file everything that we're supposed to, then we would appear on their naughty list. But we are aware of some other state authorities that don't always file everything. And
Right.
I'm not,
And we have independent auditors.
Right,
that
yeah.
do our
They have the
statement, right?
option, I would assume, but typically would not do that if we've otherwise
Yeah.
been audited. Okay. Any other questions for Evan on the procurement contract guidelines?
No, I'll move to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye?
Aye.
I vote aye as well.
Aye.
The resolution at tab 5 is also approved. We'll now hear from Carl on our internal controls review.
Correct. What you have before you, it's discussion item number 1, is a status report of NIFA's internal controls, which is to be presented each year. In it, we note the steps taken to support our system of internal controls during the prior year. As a result of the steps we took last year, we at the staff level are satisfied that our system of internal controls is effective in safeguarding assets that pass through our control and in detecting any errors in a timely manner. I note that we're continuing and updating our policies and procedures on our ongoing effort to improve our internal controls. The purpose of this report is to inform you of the status of our internal control system. No action is required on your part. Can I answer any questions?
Any questions? Hearing none, thank you, Carl. Is there a motion to adjourn this committee?
So moved.
Made? Second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I vote aye as well. The committee is adjourned. Mr. Chairman, the meeting is yours.
Thank you, Chris, and thank you, members of the board. I want to call to order the NIFA board. I want to do a roll call of the board members.
Mo Megchi, present.
Richard Kessel.
Chris Wright.
Lester Petracca.
Okay, so we do have a quorum. I want to thank everyone for coming tonight. First order of business is the approval of minutes from our April 16th, 2024 meeting. First, do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Okay, moved by Lester. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, Mo, there's a second. Are there any changes to the minutes, additions or omissions or corrections? Hearing none, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 All those opposed? Okay, the minutes carry. We now do the receipt and acceptance of audited financial statements and related actions. I'll turn it over to Chris.
Mr. Chairman, at a meeting of the Audit and Internal Controls Committee that concluded just prior to this meeting, at which all members of the committee and all members of the board here present were also present, we approved a number of items: the receipt and acceptance of audited financials, the approval of reports to be filed, readoption of investment guidelines, and amended procurement contract guidelines. And I would recommend that the board adopt items 2 through 5 as a block, in consideration of the fact that we were all present at the committee meeting and had an opportunity to ask questions at that time.
And I'll move to do that.
Made. Second.
Seconded.
Okay, is there any discussion, questions, or comments?
No.
Hearing none, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, we're on number 6 and 7. I'll have Evan deal with the readoption of property disposition contract guidelines and taking of related actions, and the readoption of NIFA Code of Ethics and the taking of related actions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The board may wish to consider action items 6 and 7 at the same time, but I'll go through them individually just to introduce them. These items are various guidelines that must be approved by the board annually. We are recommending that no changes be made to them at this time, and I'll just briefly describe each one. The property disposition guidelines govern the use, awarding, monitoring and reporting of contracts for the disposal of property. And the Code of Ethics lists the standards and principles of conduct that applies to the authority's employees, directors, and former employees. Again, these guidelines, which are behind tabs, tab number 6 and 7 of the board materials, are being submitted to the board for approval. No changes.
I'll move it.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. Next, we've got the approval of scope of services and retention of a firm to undertake reviews of the OTB, Nassau County OTB, and NUMC, the medical center. Connell?
Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Chairman, state legislation enacted in 2022 requires NIFA to conduct biennial audits of these entities and to generate findings and reports on them. The audit of the Nassau County IDA is being presented separately. The initial audits were completed in 2022, and the next round of audits must be finished by December 31st of this year. In 2022, the directors approved a list of pre-qualified firms to provide these services following a request for qualifications. You are now being asked to approve the scopes of services and the selection and retention of a firm from the list for this year's audits. The firm will undertake the reviews and provide the required findings and reports. Staff recommends the selection of Deloitte & Touche LLP to perform the services with respect to Nassau OTB and Nassau University Medical Center. You are also being asked to authorize the executive director to negotiate and execute an agreement for services with the firm at the hourly rates specified in the materials, with fees for each review not to exceed $100,000, provided that the executive director, in his discretion, may authorize an expenditure for up to an additional $50,000 per review, as he deems prudent. I'm happy to address any questions you may have about this item.
How do those costs compare to last year?
We actually have a discount this year because Deloitte we're asking the board to approve all three entities that are being audited. So Deloitte, in its original proposal, had said if they were able to get the business for all three, they would offer a 5% discount on the fees, on the hourly fees.
So our cost is 5% lower than last year?
The hourly fees are 5% lower. There'll be other variables, how many hours they put in, et cetera.
Connell, obviously I wasn't on the board at the time. Did the board use Deloitte & Touche for the OTB and the medical center last year?
Exactly, correct. And a different firm for IDA.
Oh, I know. Okay.
I'll move.
Okay, Mo moves. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, Lester, is there any discussion or comments from the board? Hearing none, all those,
I'll only point out that and I try to mention this every year, I stopped being the chairman of OTB 17 years ago, so I think I'm outside the scope.
What you disclosing?
Didn't feel the need to
What you disclosing?
to recuse, so, just to get it out there.
good. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstention? Okay. Let me just indicate to the board and publicly, the next item relates to the audit of the Nassau County IDA. I was chairman of the Nassau County IDA for a number of years through April 18th of last year. As a result, any audit that might take place by NIFA of the Nassau County IDA would include some of the years of my service there. As a result, I am going to step aside on this particular item and recuse myself from any discussions of it whatsoever, and I'm going to walk out so you guys can discuss it. Anything else you want to discuss about me while I'm leaving?
It's open mic night.
We'll need a half hour for
Yeah,
that.
we should just go get some dinner or something.
Right, and then I'll return.
You see, we've got Tom Brady.
I wish I were Tom Brady in the pocket, Kevin.
The perfect time for a
Hush
roast.
comes across the crowd. Where's Don Nichols?
Okay, we're clear.
Okay,
Okay,
thank
Tom.
you. This item is approval of the scope of services and the selection and retention of a firm to undertake a review and provide findings and a report regarding the Nassau County Industrial Development Agency. As with the previous item, state legislation enacted in 2022 requires NIFA to conduct this biennial audit of the IDA and to generate findings and a report thereon. The initial audit was completed in 2022 of the IDA, as with the others, and this next audit must also be finished by December 31st. As noted, in 2022, the directors approved a list of pre-qualified firms to provide the services following an RFQ. You are now being asked to approve the scope of services and the selection and retention of a firm from that list for this year's Nassau County IDA audit.
Point out that even in the chair's absence, a quorum still exists. There are 4 members of the board present, so we can take action.
Correct.
Any questions?
Who did this last year?
It was Alvarez and Marcel's, one of the units of Alvarez and Marcel. They're public, I think it's called the Public Services Group.
Right.
I'm satisfied. I'll move to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
I vote aye as well. The motion passes. The resolution is agreed to. You come back. Look at that.
Right on
It's like the
cue.
Oscars. He was just off stage.
About the seat.
Is this a rough board now?
It took a lot of action, actually.
Immunity. No longer the chair.
Exactly.
Fine.
He's not going to fight you on that.
Thank you for your understanding.
Understood.
Appreciate it very much. So now we've got, excuse me, a number of contracts. Martha, which ones do we want to, and how do we want to group? We want to do,
I think that we should present number 10 alone,
Okay.
11 and 12 together.
okay, so let's
13,
start with
14.
10.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
Okay, all the contracts presented today are with the Department of Public Works. The vendors have been selected through an open competitive bidding process. The county expects to fund these contracts with capital proceeds. Therefore, approval of any of these contracts does not guarantee future borrowing authorization. Item 41524, WHM Plumbing and Heating Contractors. This is a general construction service contract for the Cedar Creek Water Pollution Control Plant Digester Rehabilitation and Cleaning Phase 1 project. The contract term is 862 days from the notice to proceed and is valued at approximately $30.8 million. Are there any questions?
All right, are there any questions for Martha, on- excuse me, on this particular contract?
On all contracts in general, there was an article in Newsday today, it'll be in tomorrow's paper, about a contractor that has
The paver.
been barred from doing any municipal work in the state.
Yes.
Do we do a check for that with all these contractors? Or just the
It
county
just
does
came out right before we
Okay,
came
but
in.
is that the kind of thing
um,
that they wouldn't be able to do work for the, like, you would know and,
All contractors are checked, yeah.
okay, got it. Thank you.
I just point out before we take this contract up, that, am I correct in stating that this contract is something that we're approving going forward?
Correct.
Okay, that's an important point in terms of reviewing future contracts. Do I hear a motion to adopt the WHM Plumbing and Heating contract?
I'll move.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, any comments? All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, now we have two contracts, 11 and 12, correct?
Correct, yes. Item 393, Lockwood, Kessler, and Bartlett, and 421-424, H2M Architects, Engineers, Land Surveying, and Land. These contracts are part of a set of contracts awarded for on-call services for civil engineering, site development design, and support services for the Civil Engineering and Site Development Unit at DPW. As of today, the Board of Directors has approved 3 contracts, 2 in March, 1 in the April meeting that we just had.
So this is one more for the panel?
2 more.
2 more, because
Two
we
more,
have another one
yes.
gone. Yep, okay.
The term of each contract is 4 years from the notice to proceed with a 2-year renewal option, and each one is valued at $10 million. Are there any
And
questions?
the prior ones we approved were similar, were analogous in
Same
nature.
scope, yes.
Are there any questions for Martha on these two contracts?
I'd like to abstain from voting and do business with them.
Okay,
You still have 4.
so we still have 4.
Yep.
Lester is abstaining for the record. Any further comments or questions? All right, do we hear a motion to adopt, to accept
move.
those contracts?
Second.
Approved. Seconded by Dr. Zasso. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And 1 abstention, right? Lester?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So that's 10, 11. Now we do 12 through how many?
No,
13.
12 and, no, I'm sorry, 13 and 14 could be done together, but they're different, so maybe I'll do them separately.
All right, so
Okay.
let's do 13 first.
Yes. That is
That's
item
EJ
413,
Electric.
right, 413-24, EJ Electric installation. The vendor will provide on-call services for various electrical construction projects and in response to emergency repairs at the various county facilities and buildings. The contract term is 730 days from the notice to proceed and is valued at $6 million. Are there any questions?
Any questions on the part of the board?
I'll move it.
Hearing none, do I hear a motion to adopt?
Made.
Chris?
Second.
Okay, second by Lester. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, now that contract is accepted, now we go to DeBrun Engineering.
Yes, that's item 390-24, DeBrun Engineering. The vendor will provide construction management services to supervise the Cedar Creek Water Pollution Control Plant digester rehabilitation and cleaning project. The contract's term is 54 months after the notice to proceed and is valued at approximately $5.7 million. Are there any questions?
Any questions on the part of the board? Okay, as long as they're not doing pelletization, I'm okay with it.
Do we have to disclose that 30 years ago, we shut down Merrick Road? on a protest?
Remember that?
Right.
See, he remembers that.
Hands across Merrick Road? Is that- Is that for the
Exactly, we
public
did.
record?
And I, was- just to disclose, I
Yeah.
was part of that
That's right.
protest, so were you?
That's right. Yeah.
Long time ago. No pelletization. Okay, do I hear a motion?
Move.
So-
All
Second.
right, Mo, Lester, second. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay,
The last 3 items could be presented in a block.
all right, let's do them
Okay,
all together.
so, yes, item 416-24, NB5, New York, 423-24, Louis McLean Associates Engineers and Surveyors, and 422-24, M&J Engineering. The county awarded a contract to the top 8 firms that submitted proposal for on-call services for the Highway Bridges Construction Union in the Department of Public Works. These are 3 out of the 8 awarded contracts that have been submitted for NIFA to approval. I'm sorry, submitted to NIFA for approval. Each contract is valued at $5 million and has a term of 3 years from the commencement date, with up to 2 one-year renewal options. Are there any questions?
Any questions on the part of the board? Okay,
I'm good, I'll move.
Second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries, contract is accepted. Contracts, plural, are accepted. Now we've got a memorandum of understanding between the county and the IPBA, the Investigators Police Benevolent Association. I'll turn it over to Evan.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. The county and the Investigators Police Benevolent Association entered into a memorandum of understanding for a successor collective bargaining agreement. The IPBA was the last county union with an unsettled contract. As you recall, the previous agreement had expired December 31st, 2017. The term of the MOU is for 8.5 years, spanning January 1st, 2018 through June 30th of 2026, and conforms to the 14.76% net cost pattern negotiated with the 5 other unions covering the same years. IPBA members will receive raises annually beginning in 2020, retroactive to 2020, in the amount of 2% in 2020, then 2%, followed by 2.5%, 2.5%, 3%, and 3% over the term of the agreement. Additional provisions include a sign-on bonus of $1,000 for all eligible employees.
The contract expires in the end of '25?
Middle of '26.
You get to start all over.
June of '26.
Evan, does it include body cameras? I didn't see that. Is that just because they're not uniformed and wouldn't wear them? I know we added that to a couple of them already.
Right. These employees work for the district attorney as investigators.
They wouldn't typically have, so,
Right.
because they're undercover.
They're investigators,
Right.
so they can't wear them.
Okay, got it.
It's like a-
Just wanted to make sure we were being consistent with.
Wouldn't be a
what
good
the-
idea.
Right, it would be a dead giveaway. Yeah.
Okay, effective January 1st of '24, a senior, they've have a senior investigator stipend of $6,500 that they would receive after 6 years of service in working for the Nassau County District Attorney's Office, which will inflate in future years at the same rate of the general wage increases I described earlier. IPBA members not currently contributing to their health care benefits will be required to contribute a percentage of their base earnings, and effective January 1st of 2021, that rate would be 2% of base earnings. Effective January 1st, 22, that will increases to 2.25% of base earnings, and effective January 1st of 23, that increases once again to 2.5% of base earnings towards the cost of their health insurance. Those contributions cease upon retirement. There were a number of other provisions that were described in your materials. Members opting out of health insurance coverage will receive a $4,000 payment for waiving family coverage, or $2,000 if they waive individual coverage. Effective January 1st of '24, all members shall be required to work an additional 5 appearances. That's, I believe, the concession that provided the greatest savings as an offset towards against the costs. Effective January 1st of '24, the calculation of overtime paid to these employees will be reduced to the standard 1.5 times, which everyone is accustomed to, is familiar with. Vacation accruals are capped at 20 days, just for 2024. For new hires, termination pay is going to be capped at 1.5 times their annual salary, and sick leave is being reduced from 24 days to 18 days for new hires. The critical takeaway from this contract from this agreement is that it conforms to the 14.76 pattern that was established by the county for the other county unions and approved by NIFA over the past few years. We reviewed the administration's costing methodology and concluded that the assumptions used to cost out the agreement were reasonable. County Budget Director Andrew Persick is here if you have any questions on labor issues I haven't addressed in my summary of the terms of the agreement.
Evan, are you overall satisfied that this is a reasonable agreement?
Let me answer it differently, which is, I'll repeat, it conforms to the pattern that was established for all the unions. I think it reasonably conforms to that pattern.
And it fits in the budget.
And it fits within the budget
Right.
and multi-year plan.
Evan, this contract expires in the middle of 2026?
Correct.
So normally, when do negotiations for this contract begin? Sometime next year?
I would let the county answer that. I don't know that there is a normal when it comes to Nassau County
think in
labor
2030.
negotiations.
Huh?
Yeah, so that the
In
next one's gonna have
2030, based
retroactive
on
to it.
that.
The sooner the better.
I mean, but isn't there an incentive to try, I know that and again, I wasn't here for any of these contracts, but I just want to say, I think the board did an excellent job, and I really commend all of you, and, Adam Barsky in particular, who's no longer chairman. I think he did a great job, and I have to say, from my reading of it, if it weren't for NIPA's participation and Gary DeLaverson, who was our consultant, most of these contracts would never have happened in the first place. I mean, county certainly deserves credit as well, but I think from an outside view, I think NIPA played a critical role in these negotiations, and I think, the board is to be commended, and the staff is to be commended for the great job that you did, and hopefully, we can move some of the contracts that start to expire in a couple of years sooner rather than later. It's better to have certainty on labor agreements and rather than to go years and years and then have to do everything retroactively. It's not, the county, I think, is in a position to negotiate these contracts, and I think NYPA can play a role. And I congratulate you, Evan, and staff, and again, the board for the role you played here. I think it was superb.
Well, listen, I would echo all of the chairman's comments, and I would say that for the benefit of the union staff, the sooner the better.
Just easier that way.
And with that, I will move to approve.
Second it.
Okay, all those, any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any no? Any abstentions? Okay, so now we've completed the regular part of the agenda. Well, I will now entertain a motion to conduct an executive session pursuant to Public Officers Law 105 to consider the financial history of a particular corporation and certain matters related to proposed, pending, or current litigation. Motion?
Made.
Chris, second. Lester, all in favor?
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Let me just point out a couple of things. Kathy, when's the next meeting of the board? In June?
Tentatively for June 18th.
Okay, so tentatively, there is a meeting June 18th. Evan and I spoke about this the other day. I think the plan is to do the June meeting for sure. If you have any problems, let us know. And then we won't do a meeting in July, absent an emergency, and with things going on around now, especially with NUMC, you never know. But we will do a meeting probably in the early part of August. So we'll have one meeting over the 2 summer months, and we'll obviously, and then we'll go back to, the scheduled meetings in September. But the next meeting is June 18th, and we'll be in touch with you on that. I also do not expect the board to take any votes in executive session, so I don't want you to needlessly feel you have to hang around. If you want to, you're welcome to have some water or whatever else you want.
It's some of the best water
And
around.
we will resume public session probably in about a half hour, but only likely to adjourn and not take any votes. Thank you. We will now go into executive session.
Thank you.
Huge. You want to do this? You can stand. You don't have to sit.
Yeah, exactly, that's what I'm doing.
Mr. Chairman, I'll move that we come back from,
We got to go to
All right.
camera.
Are we
Camera,
on?
tell us
Camera
when.
on?
good.
Thank
I'm going
you.
to move that we come back from executive session.
So moved?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I move to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Have a good Memorial Day. Have a good Memorial Day, guys. Thank you.
There we go.